But of course, because it's a spoiler log, there's not many gambles to take. Kyong, however, is the developer of the Z3R simulator, where you can do simulated runs of the game. So he's done a lot of simulated runs and wrote the book on how to do simulated runs.
And it's a fantastic resource if you're looking to try to get a little better at predicting what the logic of the seed will do for you. Of course, there's no such predictions necessary here. Both of our runners have already meticulously routed their entire game, or darn near most of it. However, we are actually seeing a little bit of difference in how they progress. PinkKittyRose is going to be the first one into Lost Woods. Kyong's heading straight for the town.
Yeah, apart from being incredibly good at routing, these are both like excellent executors. PK are going for the lamp. I wonder if Kyong just decided to forego it this seed.
Yeah, lamp offers us logically not only access to dark rooms, so we can see in the dark, but it's also a fire source. So that may have some implications for where we're going to find the fire rod today. Kyong92 may be opting just to go pick that up whenever he does have the opportunity for it.
Yeah, it could be that maybe he could like route it in with a mirror when he goes to Skullwoods or something, but it is a choice. I mean, if you know your dark rooms and you're not worried about it, then you might try to save a little bit of time by avoiding it.
It seems the chat that was here from the last race noticed the immediate first item pickup for Kyong being silvers, perhaps haunted by the last race. One thing that you'll notice that's very different about this over regular randomizer races is that, for the most part, we're not checking every single chest. There may be some extra items that we pick up along the way for extra safety, as well as, extra ammo, potentially bombs if we need them. But for the most part, we're skipping just about everything we don't need, unless it's really valuable.
A lot of the route planning that happens, because you only have 15 minutes, sometimes is broad stroke. So you might see runners open up chests that don't have much, like PKR just opened up a chest for a big 20. That could be super calculated because she needs the money, or it could just be she didn't have the time to write down where the items were in which chests. So there is a little bit of like looking at the spoiler logs as you go to try to figure out, okay, now which dungeon chest had the big key in it?
Yeah, and being able to adjust on the fly has been vital to making it this far in the tournament. Several of our races have really come down to somebody misreading the spoiler log and their opponent just planning a little bit better. So every little edge really counts, particularly when we're looking at a lot of races that are sub 1 hour.
But considering PKR just picked up those bombs for exactly 50 rupees, I'm going to have to go ahead and guess that chest opening from her was calculated after all.
100%. Nice to have literally zeros on the counter. We have not seen a need for rupees beyond that. Kyong does have 25 to work with, but we could potentially be spending another 100 on the bottle vendor at some point, and we'll definitely need access to Palace of... Or no, we won't need access to Palace of Darkness for the crystal. That's a pendant today. We do also know, because of the spoiler log, where all the crystals and pendants are, so our tracker, thankfully, has been keeping us updated on that.
So Kyong finishing his kind of villagey route slightly faster than PKR, in part I think because he got the lamp, but also skipped some chests. He skipped whatever was in the back of well, I'm pretty sure. Didn't he?
That sounds correct.
No, wait, never mind. He had to have gone for well. He didn't go to the back of well, but he had to have gone to well for the shovel, so I'm wrong about that. I think PKR just got more chests in general. She does have that 10 bomb count, though, so maybe that'll be significant.
Yeah, there are quite a lot of overworld checks that you need the bomb for. Kyong actually using his only bomb for the back of Sahazrula's hut. We'll be rewarded with his hammer, some money, and even more bombs to replenish with, so that's a good find.
I have to imagine that single bomb was also calculated, and he was planning on picking up those triple bombs in Sahasrul as well.
Well, one piece of information that our runners do have from the spoiler log is the drops that they can get from a stun prize when they stun an enemy, which they don't have access to just yet, or from pulling on the trees, which have 3 different tiers of rewards. Today we found out that that's actually a small magic refill on the first tier, and the other 2 are rupees, blue rupees, so probably not worth their time today, but it's good information for them to have.
It looks like we're on kind of a similar route. PKR just a bit behind Kyong because of her early game routing, but she does have a lamp, so she might be able to catch up some of that time. Probably not in this cave, because this cave is pretty straightforward. Not a lot of opportunity to lose time here, but maybe in other dark rooms.
Yeah, if you're worried that there's something wrong with Kyong's screen, no, we're just in the dark climbing up the mountain right now. Kyong is rescuing the old man, who does have an item location for us. We did see PinkKittyRose skip 20 rupees in the back of Hosmer's hut, so I think your instincts about rupee management are definitely on point today.
Oh, there's our stun prize. Or, I mean, our stun item, not our stun prize. So now we could check what the stun prize was.
And that'd be a full magic refill, so with half magic, our runners have a lot of options if they find anything that consumes magic today. They will have no problems refilling.
Yeah, that could be a really nice item to have. So ordinarily, you don't get that information in a spoiler log, but our wonderful tournament admin, Synac, has actually modified and branched the website so that we can get slightly additional info in our spoiler logs for this tournament. So shout outs to him for that hard work.
We do get to see the top of Spectacle Rock from Kyong92, the Ether Medallion. We know because of that spoiler log that we need it for both Misery Mire and Turtle Rock required dungeons today. So being able to do so on the way up through Death Mountain, we don't have the hook shot to go east side, so this is all very convenient.
So we just watched the runners end their run by choosing to do Tower of Hera last. However, they are kind of forced to do it a bit early here in this case. It's nice when you can choose to do it last because it's right where Ganon's tower is. Oh, it looks like Kyong's not going to finish the dungeon though.
Yeah, just jumping in for the Cane of Samaria and hopping out. Certainly looking to create some kind of block in his logic for Tower of Hera and then head eastward.
Yeah, I guess it makes sense. Like, if you could come back and do it with Tempered, the boss might be faster than trying to hammer it down. And also, if you can get the boots first, then maybe you save a bit of time in the dungeon.
And we do, of course, have the difference in fire source. PKR, or PinkKittyRose, does have the ability to go to the basement and light the torches. Kyong cannot.
Oh, good point. Good point. I didn't think about that.
So there is an opportunity cost for Kyong here, choosing to skip the lamp. I mean, that's not a huge time difference whether or not you pick it up. That being said, if you know your dark rooms really well, and if you didn't need to do all of Tower of Hera right now, because you can come back to that, like you mentioned before, going into Ganon's tower, that could work out really nicely for him.
Some of the slowest dark rooms when you're trying to speed run and you don't have the lamp are in Palace of Darkness. So considering Pod as a pendant, that could play into his decision to skip that.
Well, we found a lot of things and a couple wardrobe changes for Kyong in the Paradox Cave. We call it the Paradox Cave, of course, because if you fall down the hole, you actually go higher up in the mountain, which is kind of strange. But 2 armors, boots, there's a lot going on there.
Yeah, if Paradox Cave confuses you and you would like Nintendo to change it, just write Shigeru Miyamoto a letter.
I wonder if you'd like getting letters about Link to the Past so long after the fact.
I think he would see it was like Randomizer and just like immediately rip up the letter and throw it in the garbage.
Yeah, come to think of it, don't write that letter. We do want to keep playing this game. Our Moldorm friends are storing the Master Sword for us, Kyong picking that up, and PinkKittyRose, just finishing up the basement of Tower of Hera, will head up to the top to finish now that we're armed with the big key.
So Kyong continuing his route through the light world via the items that he was able to access through Paradox Cave. I don't think PinkKittyRose loses a lot of time here by not having the boots, and also by having the hammer. If her hammer Moldorm fight is good, it's just about as fast as having the Tempered Sword regardless. So it could be nice to just get it done and out of the way, but it is going to make it really hard to compare how close these runners are.
Yeah, and we definitely won't see them converging for a little bit, given this difference. There will be quite a difference between the two of them, just for not completing Tower of Hera. Kyong heading towards Zora's Domain. We need 500 rupees in order to buy the Zora item, which would, in vanilla game, be flippers, so Moon Pearl is what we're really here for. If you're not familiar with A Link to the Past, the Moon Pearl is what prevents us from staying in the bunny state when we're in the Dark World. So this is a very essential item. You need it in every single race.
Funnily enough, if you don't have the flippers, the Moon Pearl is one of the items you might use to sequence break that location.
As an aside about that, part of the reason that works is because in the game's coding, the developers didn't really want to do checks for every single inventory item. They kind of wanted to just check for the progression you had in the game. So if you have the Moon Pearl, the game assumes that you have the flippers. In regards to how that water walk state works, when we're trying to do certain glitches to literally walk on the water, it's just kind of interesting how many little broken ways that the game actually functions that actually help us when we're trying to speedrun and do randomizers.
And I am a big fan of the sequence breaks, of course, so I hope we do get to see some, but we're probably not going to see any walk on waters this game, unfortunately, since the flippers are so easily accessible.
And speaking of the use of flippers, we ended up getting, in Lake Hylia Island, Kyong actually picking up the Titansmiths, so we have more Death Mountain that we can do now that we have the ability to pick up one of those darker rocks.
Now that he's got Titansmiths, looks like he's heading back into the Dark World to go check some stuff on Dark Death Mountain, get some items over there. It's always a question in spoiler runs, like, can you get away with fewer Death Mountain dips or later Death Mountain traverses? Both of our runners doing the same Death Mountain route in terms of how early they go up, so it's not going to make a huge difference here, but it is a huge question, and it is sometimes tough to figure out what the answer is in a spoiler log setting.
And part of what makes that math difficult is your equipment. Hookshot is a really essential item for the mountain. Just makes traversing in general easier. Plus you get some speed tech that you can do that you would not otherwise be able to do, like sword climbing, for example. And with the boots, it's really nice to have an easy way to do an item dash and do a spin speed, which is a way that we can trick the game into giving us the running speed with the walking animation, allowing us to turn corners without having to charge up dash every time.
Yeah, this glitch and other glitches like it are one of the reasons why we speedrun in the Japanese 1.0 version of the game. Because that glitch was fixed, unfortunately.
Yeah, there are only a few glitches that really persist in pretty much every version of the game. I think Torch Glitch works in 1.1 for the Ganon fight and doesn't work in 1.2, but we can definitely do like the more recently found in the last year Spooky Action Glitch, and hopefully we'll get a chance to talk about that as both runners will be going to Misery Mire at some point.
So Kyong showing us that he was going to Super Bunny Cave to pick up the Fire Rod and the Ocarina. Or the flute, as it is actually called in this game.
Yeah, Zelda games are not always great as a series at naming things the same across different entries. How many different hook shots do we need?
Yeah, right?
Although this is the only game in the series that I know of that has a bomb-flavored cereal, Bombos. You may be wondering why people are spamming the salute symbol in chat. This is our favorite friend, the interdimensional duck, who actually can follow us despite not having a flute or moon pearl of his own. Perhaps it's the Pure of Heart thing? I don't know. Some people have conspiracies about that duck being
Yeah, I can't
nefarious.
remember. I can't remember if that Pure of Heart thing was like actual lore or if it's fan lore, but
So supposedly, like when people have asked Nintendo folks about why the duck is able to go through the portal at the end of the game, or at least get to the Dark World when nobody else can, supposedly the actual gate between the two worlds at the Hyrule Castle entrance is weakening as Ganon gets stronger, so supposedly it crosses that way. Doesn't make any sense to me. We just get picked up from Ganon's tower, no problem.
I think they just wanted to reuse the animation, personally.
Because why do a different one or a unique one at the end of the game when you can just have your favorite fast travel friend pick you up? But having flute, very, very nice for getting around the world now. We do not have to do nearly as much long distance walking or running.
And logically, it can be required in certain scenarios. In this scenario, it is not required to get to Death Mountain, but it can be required to get to the Mire area, for example, which is required. It is a crystal, so we did need that flute. Apart from just helping us to get places faster, which is a reason to pick it up and activate it earlier, it was also just plain necessary to finish the seed. Oh, Kyong picking up the small key. I wonder if it's actually needed in this dungeon, or if he wasn't able to check the keys.
Yeah, so there are some key nuances to A Link to the Past Randomizer if you're not familiar. You can actually have a key locked behind itself, so the big chest in the basement that requires the big key can potentially hold the big key in a dungeon that doesn't require it for the boss. Oh, we get a God Pixel Dash? Oh, Kyong, nicely done. There's an exact pixel you can stand on in the center of that conveyor belt room that allows you to dash all the way through, but he did bless RNG before his run, and the enemies were cooperative. Makes sense to me.
So he's not going up to blow up the attic because Thieves Town is only a pendant. We just need to get the 7 crystals in order to get to Ganon and kill him. So he's coming here for some needed item to finish the game. And that is the bow. So it's an interesting pickup because in this seed, the bow is not actually needed. This is getting a little bit complicated with how you'd have to sequence break this, but there is a relatively new sequence break that we have found that allows you to skip the Mimic Room, which normally requires the bow, in Ganon's Tower. And I am positive that Kyong knows the skip. And then you don't actually need the bow to defeat Ganon if you use another glitch. So it's interesting that he picked it up, but it could be because those glitches can take a while, that he figured the time save of picking up the bow was worth, the time loss of the sequence breaks.
So this is really interesting also. Kyong using the similarities between the Skull Woods and Lost Woods to put a portal down and pick up his lamp on the way through Skull Woods. Which is actually very convenient routing-wise. I don't know if it saves the time with the mirror transitions, or at least very much time, but it looks sweet. It looks like 200 IQ play.
I have to give credit to Kyong here because, I would be the kind of person who just does the sequence break because it's cool. But I think Kyong actually knows what the time loss and time gain is, and he makes a calculated decision when he makes these choices. We'll see what PKR decides to do, however. She does need to come here for a sword, but she could decide to forego the whole rest of the dungeon if she doesn't want the bow.
And we get to see some of the more fine-tuned execution between these runners and some of these more difficult rooms in these dungeons. Kyong really taking care of the back half of Skull Woods with no real problems. There's some exceptionally difficult things to deal with, including those Gibdos, or we like to call them mummies. This Mothiel fight, blink and you might miss it though. This is a quick one.
Yeah, that was almost as fast as you can do that fight.
One thing we do to make that fight faster is we charge a dash into the block on the north side of the screen. Mothiel is immune to the spikes, so if you do damage to Mothiel and knock him into spikes, it actually just cancels what you just did. So you kind of have to position him carefully, and if you have Tempered Sword, which is really powerful, and Fire Rod, you can get it done really fast.
If you saw Zelma's one-hit KO run at this AGDQ that happened just last winter, then you'll know how hard it is to do some of these dungeons without taking any damage. And I just want to draw attention to the fact that each runner's on 6 hearts, and they're making this look really easy. I mean, Thieves Town isn't the most dangerous dungeon in the world, but as we go along, particularly into some of the harder Dark World dungeons, it'll be really cool to see how they have to deal with not getting hit. Yeah, they do have red mail.
Harder compared to where you'd be in an actual speed run.
Oh my god, that was a nice dash through those energy blobs on Kyong's side. That is a very hard dash to get.
Yeah, that one isn't frame rule based, is it? It's timing?
Well, it's both, I think. I think you can dash through it because of the frame rule, but you need to time it perfectly.
Yeah, there's a number of frame rule things that exist in this game. A good one that's really handy if you're getting into the game and you're running low on health in dungeons. If you have a boomerang or a hook shot, you can actually pick up a freestanding heart. And there's a 1 in 4 chance that it'll heal you twice. Game's weird, man.
Yeah, Oss is saying that is a first frame dash. That is definitely one of the ways to do it, and I think it's the most consistent way. But you could technically do it later after you've entered the entrance. But besides the point, it is incredibly precise. It is basically like frame perfect.
We'll see a lot of little small optimizations throughout the run. I'm really excited, hopefully, to see the Misery Mire get completed with Spooky Action Glitch that we found out about last year, kind of about a year ago now. A way that we can hit things from a distance with the splash damage of a fire rod saves about 10 seconds in that dungeon. Probably the biggest discovery in years when it comes to this game. But Randomizer, you definitely see a lot of unconventional things. So we may just see some more time saves that are kind of unique to this sort of format.
It's one of the things I love about the spoiler format is, I'm a real big fan of NMG and the kind of execution that engenders and the kind of speed strats that you get to find because you're playing such a tight game mode. But what I love about the spoiler mode, however, is you get that plus it kind of tests your entire game knowledge and you're planning for contingency situations. Like, can I defeat this boss with the fire rod, for example? Or it looks like he's just going to take the silver arrows.
I was surprised he didn't use the moth to a flame reference there, but you know what? I'm going to have to do it after the fact.
I think you just did.
But, you blink and you miss it again. Both bosses down. You saw Lamolus get just absolutely destroyed by Kyong. Silver Arrows, an overpowered weapon by every measure. If the Fighter Sword were to do 1 damage in terms of damage scaling in this game, the Silver Arrows are 100. To any enemy that can actually be affected by them. Damage classes are actually a highly relevant factor to consider, as not every enemy can take damage from everything.
Yeah, in fact, if you were to try to spin attack Mothula with a Tempered Sword, I think it would fail, right? It wouldn't take any damage at all.
Yeah, because it works as a gold sword, effectively a gold sword swing. Now, you can poke with the gold sword in the vanilla game. All these things are patched out in the randomizer, so you're never going to have a problem doing that in this, but if you were to boot up a vanilla 1.0 cart or ROM, legally owned, of course, you would have that issue potentially if you were to go through all the trouble. Did PinkKittyRose just toss that bird?
Oh my god, the disrespect! PKR taking the time in the spoiler finals to toss that frozen bird.
Somewhere Wallace Prime is smiling. And I think fans of Execution are smiling as we got great Mire 2 rooms from both of our runners.
Yeah.
Taking great advantage of sword beams to get through that very quickly.
And that's a vanilla NMG speedrun strat there, is with the sword beams and the fire rod.
I thought you were about to say the bird toss.
That is not... I mean, I think it comes from NMG originally, but it is not a speed strat.
The story behind that is the murder dactyl, as we like to call him, that bird that flies towards you as you're activating ether. It tends to do a lot of damage, and you want the sword beams for Mire 2. So what happens to some runners is they'll kind of get into this dance while it circles around them, and one runner accidentally picked it up, the bird, on the way into the dungeon and didn't know what to do with it, so just kind of panicked and tossed it in the water. And thus was the birth of that meme.
I didn't know that. What was that? Kyong, what do you... What? Was he setting up for the Spooky Mire glitch that way?
Yes,
I've never seen that.
So one thing you can do to explain this glitch, we talked about how we can hit the fire rod splash damage from a distance. This uses a variable that sprites have called altitude, and we can manipulate that by dashing right before we place a block to change which slot the sprite value goes to. If you throw a Samaria block into the void, it gives you the highest possible value. So when you see Kyong here using the fire rod, he's going to hit a switch through the north wall, allowing him to dash through and save having to go through that bomb wall entirely. We'll see another instance of it when we... Well, I guess he can't do it from this distance, given that Samaria value, but PinkKittyRose in the third room will be able to hit a torch with the fire rod to hit that switch that Kyong had to go around for.
So they both set up different altitude values for this glitch. Different setups. I think Kyong knows both. I'm not sure if PKR does, but I think that PKR's is actually easier. So I'm interested why Kyong might have chosen this one, unless I'm just incorrect about it.
It seems like Kyong may have been doing so as a backup. May have had to use that sprite value and had it reset at some point.
Aha, that makes
Using
sense.
I mean, it's based on something called Mancilla in the disassembly, like where if you create an object with that particular sprite slot, oh my goodness, you will have it overridden. So Kyong using a backup strategy that's actually older within the history of that glitch. PinkKittyRose using what's more traditionally seen today.
Yeah, some chat's pointing out, for the sake of the YouTube VOD that's going to be made, I'm just going to say this aloud. Chat's pointing out that because Kyong did Desert Palace first and got the crystal, the altitude value was deleted from that crystal drop. So that's why he had to use the backup strat there.
All of this just to save potentially 10 seconds.
Right, exactly. Incredible. And this could be the reason. I think, you know, watching that Vitreous fight, it's so fast with silver arrows. This could be the reason that both runners, a big part of the reason why both runners chose to get the bow after all. As cool as that sequence break is that was recently found, it saves you a ton of time on fights like that.
Yeah, and the other alternative is doing a damage boost Vitreous, which would be extremely dangerous. At minimum, you have to do 4 hearts of damage to yourself to do that, and taking even 1 hit from the boss would kill you in that scenario. So definitely understand why we went out of our way to pick up silvers before we did this. Silvers are pretty free today, thankfully. But beyond that, they wouldn't need it for a whole lot until much later.
So they're both on such a similar route here, and this is a common thing we see in spoiler runs. Sometimes there's some funny divergence, and then we converge. That's the word I'm looking for. Reverge. We come back together again at a certain point. But because PKR chose to do Tower of Hera so early, and Kyong is going to wait until the very last dungeon to do it, it'll be hard to guesstimate exactly how far behind or ahead each runner is. But if I had to guess at this moment, I would say it's like pretty neck and neck here.
Yeah, this is definitely within the margin of error. We're not looking at some kind of massive equipment difference to the point where we're going to see an execution advantage from either of them. Both of them extremely good at executing this game. We saw that in the boss fights so far. At this point, I think it comes down to whether or not someone misses certain checks or makes too many checks. Based on how they parse the spoiler log. Something worth mentioning is that some item locations in the spoiler log are not exactly obvious. There's big chests and big key chests being said in all dungeons, so you could easily mix these things up. Or even the map or compass chest.
Yeah, I mean, I think at this point, I would hope anyway that there wouldn't be some kind of error like this by our runners. But you know, these are both racers that are very familiar with the spoiler logs. I mean, PKR has been doing spoiler logs since before it was cool, and Kyong, of course, wrote the simulator, which is based off of the logs. So I gotta think that they know, you know, the names of these chests in the logs. There's our ice rod. So I think that's the last progressive item we actually need in order to beat the game. And at this point, it's just defeating bosses.
Yeah, that appears to be the case. They could still pick up more safeties, as 6 hearts is a very dangerous way to finish the game. Ganon definitely hits hard. So, yeah, I mean, and they were able to handle Ganon damage list for the most part. But it's just not something you want to risk when it's the entire tournament on the line. But they probably will not go out of their way. They will only pick up things that are directly in their path at this point. As we like to call it in traditional fast randomizer go mode, we got a 0-cycle attempt from Kyong92 here. This is extremely difficult, the most difficult boss strategy in the game.
Just barely misses it, got hit by a puffball there, and has to wait for the animation to complete. But yeah, that's a very hard strat.
What's so difficult about that strat is you actually have to combine several different unintended game states. One of them being an item dash, which is where you press the item and the dash button at the same time, go figure, same frame. But when you do so with the sword outstretched, you can actually poke enemies as you pull them in, which requires you to do 3 simultaneous inputs continuously, over and over and over again. So this is definitely the hardest one to do quickly.
Well, actually, that's a common misconception of it, and a lot of people try it that way, and it's a lot harder to do it that way. But the reality is that you just need to set up the item dash once, you hold the sword out as a poke, and then you just need to time your hook shot, and you don't need to item dash over and over again. So, fun fact, if you've been trying to get that zero cycle Argus down, it is actually a lot easier to just do a single item dash and time your hook shots correctly.
That would definitely explain why I dropped so many of them. Thanks for
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, no problem. I'm always here to, cover you. You can always just blame me too, as well. Anybody in chat, you're feel free to blame me. Be like, well, Kern taught me it this way, and this is obviously inferior, so he's the reason why my times are so bad.
Thousands of Twitch chatters shaking their fists at the sky. Gurn! We do get to see Ice Palace from Kyong now that we're done with Swamp. PinkKittyRose diving straight back to Argus as well. Ice Palace, an interesting place if you haven't played this in vanilla in a long time. This would typically be a much longer dungeon, but since we know we can just go straight to Cold Stare, we can actually take advantage of our first bomb jump of the run, I believe. Yeah, I don't think we've seen any other bomb jumps so far. But this one will actually cut out pretty much half of the entire dungeon.
Yeah, I mean, I don't even remember how you're supposed to do this dungeon, like, quote-unquote, as Shigeru Miyamoto intended it, but it involves like a lot of switching switches and like going back to the dungeon. We just never do that in a speedrun, but particularly not when we don't need anything in this dungeon.
Well, let me put it this way, it is so poorly designed as far as the puzzle goes that in the inferior Game Boy Advance port, it actually changed the puzzle entirely so that you don't have to walk around the dungeon the same way,
Wow.
just to flip a switch.
This is definitely one of the dungeons that my parents had to call Nintendo of America, like the Nintendo helpline, to get a hint on.
I wonder what happens if you call those lines today. Also, don't be alarmed at what you just saw on Kyong's side as PKR is finishing up Argus. That was actually a clip into a staircase that is legal for doing during races. You have to do a sword spin on ice physics to just slide into the railway. You can actually kind of mess that up though, so it's kind of risky. A little bit of time save.
Yeah, and in a perfect world, in an NMG setting, it does save you a little bit of time if you don't mess it up. It can also hurt you as well, which, if you mess it up, can be a downside.
Well, we saw a regular Argus kill from PinkKittyRose, not really losing much time thanks to Argus being one cycle for Kyong. Kyong's doing the Cold Stare fight with some poke dash strats, which is an exceptional way to do the fight. That was a perfect fight.
Yeah, very nice. Again, this is the vanilla NMG fight, and at this point we have vanilla NMG equipment. Both of these are NMG runners, so I'm assuming we're going to see a ton of NMG strats. The only thing that's not NMG about their setup right now is Red Mail 6 Hearts.
Well, we have just 2 crystals remaining between the 2 of them. Ice Palace being a very fast one, Tower of Hera being on the way for Kyong. So Kyong does have the advantage of climbing the mountain first. PinkKittyRose has a faster dungeon to do overall.
Oh, yes, Chad is wondering what NMG is. Pardon me in my acronymage. NMG refers to no major glitches, which is just a rule set of the Link to the Past randomizer speedruns. You could say that any randomized game is technically NMG unless you're playing major glitches, but we also use it as shorthand to refer to a speedrun of the vanilla game. So sometimes when we say NMG, what we mean is the non-randomized ROM hack.
I can't believe you're not going to call it by its full name, though. It's any %, no save and quit, no major glitches. It's been through a history. It's kind of a can of worms in that community as far as trying to figure out what we should call the darn thing.
Which is why we just call it NMG.
Although, don't get me started on the various low % categories. Low TAD, low... it goes on and on and on. For those of you wondering about the true any % of this game being very short, like a couple of minutes, that's based on a glitch that we don't allow in pretty much any race setting, called Exploration Glitch, which allows us to exploit the layering of the game. You see some staircases within rooms that take you to different layers of the room. You can mess with the game based on that, and it allows you to pretty much go anywhere in the world from one subscreen.
PinkKittyRose using the older strat to get through that ice room, which is not that much slower, if done perfectly, than the one that Kyong used, but is a lot safer.
And it looks really cool.
It does look cool.
If you're ever having trouble with ice physics and trying to line up your way through doors or through ladders, you can use boots to stop your sliding. And that's a good way to kind of compensate if you were to mess up the strat that PinkKittyRose is trying there.
Some nice early keys in Turtle Rock, so hopefully they can avoid much of this dungeon. Nice quick cold stare fight from PKR. Not fast cold stare, not quite as fast as it can be in the vanilla game, in a vanilla speedrun.
And there's a variety of strategies. One thing that's really interesting to note about the speedrun of this game, and as well as you see it in Link to the Past Randomizer as well, is just how much more difficult the harder strats get and how little time save there is for them. A lot of these strategies are variants of 5 to 10 to 20 frames for something that probably takes hours worth of practice. Cold Stare, no exception. There's slightly faster strats with poke dashes that, you know, if you're gonna potentially die to it, probably not worth, but if you've practiced it.
So we've got PKR heading up the mountain as Kyong is just about, maybe almost halfway through his Turtle Rock. So I don't know. I think that in this case, Kyong has got a lead because the time that PKR needs to catch up here is, I'm guessing, less than the time it's going to take Kyong to just go mode up to Moldorm. Although he does need to do Tile Room, right? Do I remember that correctly?
Yeah, we do have to do the basement of Tower of Hera to get that big key, which is required to go any further upstairs, so it becomes a longer dungeon than we would otherwise expect to see.
Oof, I guess that makes it too close to call still then. It's so hard to guess at which runner is ahead right now.
Yeah, the one advantage that Kyong has is that he doesn't have to cross the mountain twice to get to Tower of Hera and Turtle Rock. Being able to do that with just a mirror is very handy. However, we would have to start from the Dark World in order to take advantage of that mirror opportunity, so it's pretty much a moot point. Now, we do still, of course, have Ganon's Tower and the Ganon fight ahead of us, no real equipment differences between the two. So this is an execution battle all the way through, and there's plenty of margin of error.
Yeah, lots of little bits of time can be gained and lost in GT. And in fact, for speedrunners of the vanilla game, GT is like the thing that people actually need to work on the most. Usually, even the most experienced speedrunners have a lot of time loss potential, time gain potential in Ganon's Tower.
Even the numpties. Everybody has a chance of suffering in Ganon's Tower, and there's just so many small rooms, and it's very, like, combat heavy as well, so that's a great place to practice it. I do see a question in chat about what the spoiler log means, or what the spoiler portion of the title is. This is the spoiler log tournament, the grand finals. Our runners both had 15 minutes to prepare for the race, with the full contents of the spoiler log, which tells you where every item location is in Hyrule. Using those 15 minutes, they get to route their way through the entire world, and we're seeing 38 minutes later, they're gathering their last crystals. That is the product of having that time. Typically, we'd be looking at races hour 15, hour 30 to get to this point. For a lot of folks out there, though, these two are pretty good. Kyong doing a backdoor Trinex right now just to show off.
Well, it is a bit faster, because you can get a one-cycle Trinex this way with the Tempered Sword.
Yeah, and it's definitely worth it. That extra thrust attack from the third head is pretty slow.
Ooh, that was a very fast final cycle there, or final phase.
Yeah, as optimal as it gets for the second part of that fight. Alright, well, we're well equipped. We have half magic, 6 and 7 hearts, or 7 and 6 hearts respectively. We have a pretty good chance of getting through here unscathed, but with all the combat ahead, I wonder if nerves are going to be on anybody's mind going into this Ganon's Tower. This is a scary time to be making a mistake.
Yeah, we're about to find out just how close we are to each other. This could be a sub 50 from both of our runners, which is nice. It's amazing when that can happen.
I'm just blown away that we're heading towards the end of, or our last crystals at 40 minutes. This is just such an exceptionally awesome pace.
Yeah, it is. Even for a spoiler run, this is really amazing. That's why these people are in the finals, is because they're very, very good at this game. Which is a great time to remind you to give these folks a follow. If you've never seen them before, but even if you have and you've just never followed them, now's the time to do it. They are both amazing. They're wonderful to hang out in their channel, and they're great people as well as really great speedrunners as well.
And if we get the chance to have an interview with them, if this were to be PKR's race, we probably would. You know, both of them are fantastic to talk to and listen to. PinkKittyRose with a lot of energy, you know, enthusiasm for everything. Kyong92 with exceptional knowledge and experience in this community. Both definitely worth taking a look at. And of course, if you are enjoying the content that you're watching now, want to see more like it, Speed Gaming and Speed Gaming 2 through 6, definitely worth a follow. You can see both the Link to the Past Randomizer and other video game tournaments of this nature. The entire schedule can be found at the bottom underneath the video player, and there is quite a lot on the schedule every week. Plenty of things to watch.
Oh my goodness. PKR heading into the Trinex fight as Kyong is just 2 floors down from the Moldorm fight. This is very close. I think Kyong might have a few seconds of a lead. Nice backdoor fight from PinkKittyRose. I love that dash through the head as well. That was just pure swag.
This really is too close to call. For those of you who haven't seen a tie before, that's a possibility in today's race, which would push our game to an extra game in the series. It would have to be, I believe it's a 3-second margin for this tournament.
You know, I should know that as an administrator, but I haven't looked at the rules docs recently, so I'm not quite sure.
3 or 5 seconds.
We usually give a little bit of leeway on time because the thing that we use to synchronize our end time finishes has a little bit of latency involved, so we cut a little slack in that regard. Yeah, Sinak, the tournament admin who would know the answer to that question, is telling us that 2 seconds is a tie, which would be very close. Ooh, PKR going to Hookshot Cave for something.
Yeah, we did not see this at all from Kyong.
Oh, man.
This is a time investment that, with no difference in equipment, is kind of gutsy to make.
For a cape.
Oh.
I wonder, okay. I mean, they've got red mail.
Come to think of it, we forgot to ask everybody, if you have a guess, we usually like to play a game where we guess the number of which chest is found, but guess the actual location itself, Eves. Oh, too late. That was the big key. We would have played the game, but unfortunately, it was in the Hope Room first chest. Now, Kyong is heading upstairs with just 1 key. That's exactly what you need. An easy mistake for a lot of runners to make is to not go upstairs with 1 key, because you're going to need 1 upstairs to get through... What is that, by the torch room?
It's the room after the mini Helmas.
Yes, the last possible restock before Moldorm 2.
Which is terrible, because you go all the way up the tower only to find out that you don't have the keys that you need, if you were to make that mistake. Okay, PKR heading up the staircase just about 40 seconds, a little bit later than 40 seconds behind Kyong. That's not the entire difference of going into Spike Cave, but that certainly didn't help. But if Kyong takes some damage here, as he is taking, and PKR is able to avoid some because of her use of the cape, this could be a difference. Like, if Kyong needs to go out of his way to get hearts, I mean, if, or, you know, heaven forbid, he were to die, that would be a huge difference maker.
And good as these two are, I mean, Ganon's Tower is brutal. We're going through the gauntlet now. Both of our runners, or at least Kyong just passed through one of my favorite rooms, Ganon Ball Z. We'll see PinkKittyRose heading through there in a moment as well. But this is definitely a place where these spikes, these conveyor belts, the BMO statues, the Zazax enemies themselves, all of them are going to do a heart, and are a serious threat to anybody who doesn't have, say, 13 or 14 hearts like you would in an actual speedrun.
Yeah, speaking of, Kyong is taking a little bit of damage up the gauntlet track. He doesn't have powder or anything like that to help him restock, and He has a bottle, but I can't remember if he has a potion or not.
And I doubt that he does. I don't think we stop for anything like that. Unfortunately, not getting a one cycle for the Lammolis fight. Those silver arrows can be kind of annoying because the flight path and the length of the flight for each individual Lammolis worm is RNG. So, less RNG at the beginning of the race, not helping him there, but we do have a green potion as we see on the pause screen.
Aha, so it isn't a health potion, which is a bit of a bummer. His gauntlet was a little bit less than as efficient as it could be, as efficient as PKR's has been, so she has gained a bit of time here. And if she can one-cycle Landmo, that'll be a big deal as well in terms of time gain. Very clean one cycle.
Every single Lammolis today.
So I think that... Sorry, go ahead.
We did get to see a really nice Samaria strat from Kyong. PKR is going to put it on display here for the Wiz Robes, as well as the next room, which you have to place one and do a nice sword slash on conveyors.
So all told, I think that PKR only gained about 5 to 10 seconds there in the gauntlet. So there's still a lot of time gain she would need to make up this difference. But Kyong is at 3.5 hearts, so...
Not only that, but we're only a few rooms behind. It's looking like both of our runners have escaped the clutches of the Ganon's Tower sprite despawn glitch. If you were to go up those stairs going into the torture room, right as the door behind you in the room prior closes, you would actually despawn every sprite in the tower and would be forced to mirror out to restart the entire thing. Very frustrating thing that's definitely happened in real races.
Yeah, if you're worried that you're heading up those stairs a little bit late, then you should just wait until you hear the chime again. All right, Kyong having beaten the second to last mini boss of the game. PKR just arriving.
Aghanim 2 here is a great equalizer between runners. They're going to get the exact same patterns and same RNG for this fight and Ganon. So these patterns that they have to deal with, they're going to try and get 3 hits at once. It's going to be 6 hits total. However, if they do have overlapping shots, which I think Kyong had right there, they will only count as 1. So I think he's up to 3, maybe 4 hits.
Yeah, I think he's at 3. Oh, God. So he's on his 4th cycle now. This could be another place that PKR can make up some time. She's going to get the same, as you said, the same randomization, however. Oh, my God. The nerves must be kicking in right now, and Kyong is hating this.
This is his tournament life on the line as he walks into the Ganon fight, or I guess he descends into the Ganon fight. Our duck friend really coming to the rescue here in the Dark World somehow. Looking like PKR is having a little bit better of the Aga 2 fight. Unfortunately, not landing some of the important shots, but does save some cycles over Kyong. That's definitely time save.
Yeah, I think that maybe another 10 seconds there, but all in all, all told, she had like 40 seconds to make up from the beginning of the gauntlet. So
down to the wire, who's got the best 1+1 cycle, and that's what we're really looking for here. This is a 4-cycle boss fight sword. You need to do the equivalent of 12 slashes or 6 sword spins in order to advance each of the first 2 phases. In phase 3, you just need 4 hits when he jumps, and in phase 4, we have the silvers. 4 of those arrows will finish it.
Oh, a fire bat hit. And also, what was that 1-in-1 strat from Kyong? I have never seen anybody do that 1-in-1 strat before. That is weird.
Dashing in the circle?
Well, not just dashing the circle, but the the double spin against the wall during the second phase. I mean, PKR is doing it too. Maybe I've just spent too long away from Rando, and this is a thing now.
I mean, you usually see it in the bottom right torch more often than the left because that's a more common RNG. But yeah, I mean, if you can bounce against the wall, that does give you a faster refresh on the sword spin. You're able to hit him a little sooner. This is down to 1-hit kill for Kyong. He's got to land 2 more arrows after this. Doesn't bother with the torch glitch for a better setup. And nice. He has done it.
Very nice kill. He still has to walk through the door.
For all the memes this tournament about doing a sub-50 seed, Kyong has actually managed to pull that off in this race, which is kind of scary. I am not sure if I want to sign up for the next one.
49:01. I can't believe it. Official SRL time, including the spoiler log look time, is 1 hour, 4 minutes, 3 seconds, which means that is math is hard, 49-minute, 3-second finish official for Kyong as PKR walks in the door at 49 minute 24 seconds official time.
Yeah, 20-something difference between the two of them. This is just an incredible race. I mean, that was about the spread between the last race too, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was equally close. It was really exciting to see, like, PKR trying to make up some time there at the end. In the end, I'm not sure she used the cape. I mean, she used the cape right before the gauntlet to avoid some damage on the spikes, but I wonder if that could have made the difference, if she could have just taken the game if she had avoided the cape pickup in Hookshot Cave.
That certainly was a very close margin. If not, we'd be looking at like tie territory, I would think, at the bare minimum. There was, of course, it's always hard to isolate which exact choice and which exact movement, cost somebody or won somebody a race. That was the most obvious and present one for us as we were finishing up the race. There could have been a number of other smaller things, but definitely did look that way right at the end. I would agree that that was a difference that could have potentially won the tournament for PinkKittyRose.
Yeah, it's really easy to focus on the stuff at the very end of the game. But yes, of course, the whole thing, it makes a difference. We did see, for example, like Kyong pull off an almost 0-cycle argument.
Though, I do gotta, shout out and highlight PinkKittyRose for the sportsmanship. Throwing the bird into the water, making sure that, he gets a drink. That's an important thing that I think a lot of people have left by the wayside. I'm not a big fan of all the memes in the community necessarily, but that's my favorite one. And PinkKittyRose wins my vote today. But we are blessed, thankfully, with a Game 3 that will follow immediately after this. And we'll also have a new set of commentators. It appears that we are actually joined in the call by HammerBro and Wolflink0370. They'll be joining us in just a moment to talk a little bit about this race. But if you are looking to catch the Game 3, the grand finalist of finals, we're going to have a 15-minute spoiler log study period following these credits. So you'll have an opportunity to get something to drink, get a snack or something like that.
Get a bowl of cereal.
Decompress a little bit.
Yeah, exactly. This is intense. And I think we are actually joined in the room by Cyclone, Hammer, and Wolflink. How is it going?
Man, this is awesome. I was able to watch the first race from work, very quietly, mind you, and then got to come home early and watch the second race. I am so hyped for this. This is going to be a blast.
Yeah, 2 very close games. I'm very excited to win on to Game 3. And how are you, Wolflink?
To be really honest, I'm a little nervous about this. Because I'm not sure you've seen it in the chat, but I've been in PKR's corner this entire time. I was hoping that this would be a 2-0 sweep.
If you're nervous about this, just think I started off the whole thing too. You'll be fine.
We'll be fine. Yeah. What we really want is a Game 4, so that's what we all need to be
Game 4? Really? No, not happening. I don't think
so far that's the par for the course. I mean, a 20-second swing for both runners in first 2 races. I would not be surprised to see a tie in Game 3.
We're seeing PKR kind of chat about the bow skip decision, saying it in the IRC, saying it was tempting to try and skip the bow in this one, but couldn't make an argument for it, with the tempered also being in Thievestown because they had to go anyway. That would have been fun to see, but yeah, I think they were correct in not skipping the bow.
Yeah, depending on where that 4th sword was, it was definitely worth the dip into Thievestown to grab the bacon sword and the bow, so you don't have to clip those stupid mimics.
Yeah, it's definitely not a fun one to do, and it takes some practice to really get that down. There are other glitches that we didn't get to see in this run that have to do with mimics, like, for example, the potion manipulation glitch, where we can unhinge the camera, which is kind of an interesting thing. So there's a lot of stuff that, even in this format, we don't get to see. And then in the knowledge that both of these runners have to bring to the table, to even have them being considering a bow skip, for example, when logically you wouldn't need it for anything but those mimics. It just speaks to how much these two have spent, how much energy they've spent into trying to get as good at this as they possibly could be.
It's funny that you mentioned the bow skip, or the potion skip, the potion glitch. We did get to see that in the first race, so that was something we are getting to see all the different tech and all the different seeds that we're getting today. So who knows what other tech still is being done. That's going to be done in the 3rd seed. When we have that seed generated moment, we're going to get to see what that log looks like. We're going to get to see what is coming up in that race as well. So who knows what else we're going to get to see showing off today.
I wanted to ask Hammerbro and Wolflink, if the two of you did get to see it, what did you think about the two different spooky action glitch setups from Misery Mire? Did you happen to catch that?
I did, and good on Kyong for doing that backup there. Or PKR, I believe that's one of her normal moves there as well. She likes doing that one.
Yeah, PKR did do the traditional one, which I believe was the same one that she did game 1. But Kyung throwing that block in there, it was something I'd heard about, but never actually seen done. And since he did Desert first, he didn't really have a choice. It was either do that, skip it, or have to flute back over to Meyer and reset the whole thing, which obviously would have not saved him any time. So it was really cool backup strat to see, because I mean, when you have a glitch like that, you probably practice it enough to be good at it, but then practicing the backup strat just in case you still need it and something else happens that disallows your initial way of doing the glitch, that's just crazy to be able to see.
Yeah, and the nuance there about the block, the altitude variable that we were talking about stored that applies to the fire rod splash damage. Normally, when you set up the variable, you're doing it with the actual the bird on screen when you're fluting to 6. When you pick up the rock to go in the portal, the bird will be at a certain point in the screen, and that's where it drops off and stores that value. When you throw a block into a void, that gives it the highest possible value, given the, I think it's 16-bit nature of the processor, that'd be 255, I guess. Which is as high up in the screen as it possibly could be. So you have to do your fire rod shots a little different in order to actually hit that switch. So for them to know that and or for Kyong to adjust like that really speaks to experience in this case.
All right, well, thank you for your work here in game 2 here. We're going to go ahead and try to wrap things up here. Give you guys a very climactic finish here, I guess I could say. It's game 3. It's a fitting end to this, I believe. This last spoiler log tournament race goes to game 3.
And of course, even though it is the last spoiler log tournament race, it was such a good tournament that odds are we're probably going to be throwing one of these again. We're already talking about some ideas for future spoiler log tournaments. Who knows? We could end up having any kind of spoiler log tournament in the future. Like, all the different formats are available. So in the future, this will probably come back. Probably not before the next main tournament. It'll probably be after that, if anything. But this could come back, and this could be a different format. We could have something else interesting for you guys to see. So we are definitely looking forward to bringing this to you again in the future.
I know
Cool.
everybody
I
watching is
hope-
definitely looking forward to this and wanting to get involved themselves. So definitely check out the main Link to the Past Randomizer Discord if you want to stay up to date on that. And of course, here on Speed Gaming, you can probably find that as well. But if you want to get involved in the next one while we're doing qualifiers, that'd be the best way. I'm pretty sure everybody wants to see another of these tournaments. While I have a moment before we finish up the credits, which is when we're going to get started on that spoiler log study session, I want to thank Kern for sharing the mic with me today, and Semimus for doing the tracking on the background, keeping us all up to date. Major shout outs. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. It was an absolute pleasure and an honor, and good luck, gentlemen.
Indeed.
Bless RNG.
Well, thank you, Unimonistic and Kern, for doing the commentary for that race. I think we are going to turn it over to Hammer and Wolflink at this time to wrap us up going into Game 3. Enjoy.
Indeed.
Take it easy, folks.
Yep, have a good one, and thanks for all the work you guys have done. It has been an absolute blast, and we have one more race at the very least to run through. So, Wolflink, what are you looking forward to for this game? I know we haven't seen the log or anything yet, but what are you looking for?
We've had 2 close games. Let's make it a close third. Just have everything come to a matter of 5 seconds.
I mean, I'd honestly much rather it be within 2 seconds. We can just have a game 4, because aren't you always supposed to root for more rando?
I don't think our runners would appreciate that.
That's a fair point. Anyways, I'm fairly certain that we will be releasing the spoiler log shortly, so I am going to go ahead and duck out. We are going to
Our
get a
study
look at our
period
spoiler
now.
log.
In a little bit here as well. So stay
Yep.
tuned, folks. The winner will be decided in a few short moments. One last race to decide the winner of the Elite to Best Randomizer Spoiler Log Tournament. I'm excited, and I hope you guys are as well. See you guys in a little bit.